Okay, and the jury.
Folks, for those of you that are just coming in, my name's Leslie Dornfeld. I'm the consultant. So we're at about 1:30. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes. I'm going to ask we've got a tremendously full agenda. So I'm going to ask those of you that are not members of the steering committee, but are just watching or participating as community members, to type your comments into the chat. And I think that way we can kind of figure out time-wise how we can get through all of this. I also want to let all of you know that we are recording the meeting, and the meeting will get posted on the website. There's the comment page on the website. Christiane, who's participating in the meeting, will type the website into the chat if you're not aware of that location. You can go to that website and visit it as well and provide your comments. Tyler, are you comfortable with that approach at this point?
Definitely, Leslie. That sounds good.
Okay. Give it a couple more minutes. If anybody wants to know who's in the meeting, I'm sure you're all Zoom experts. You can always click the participants tab and find out who's joined us. There's a chat button also on the top of your screen. You can use that. It looks like a little voice bubble. You can use that for chat. There's next to that an emoji button, which you should be able to see. And that'll give you kind of reactions if you want to just put a reaction next to your screen. Okay. Every time I'm about to say let's start, someone else comes in. Okay. Okay, I think we're about ready to roll. So everybody should be able to see my screen, yeah?
Yes.
Is there anyone that can't see that screen? Okay. Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming. Again, we have a huge group, 32 people are in the meeting. As I'd mentioned earlier, please click on the participants tab and you can scroll down and see who's joined the meeting. We have a super full agenda today. So I'm going to ask folks that are not on the steering committee to include their comments in the chat. I'm also going to turn off my camera just because I don't want to have delays and create bandwidth problems, because the slides sometimes just overload everything we've got. So I'm not trying to hide from you. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't lose communications. So with that, I'm going to turn off my projector and start the slideshow. This is the Prescott North Steering Committee meeting. This is our second steering committee meeting. And here's our agenda. We've done a lot of assessments of the project area, and our consultant team is on board. They'll be sharing that with you. We've also, since we met last, had focus groups. Some of you may have participated in them. Focus groups are topic experts, landowners, key stakeholders. I know that there are some of you that feel that they want to have additional conversations with us. We'll be happy to work with the city to accommodate that. We also put a survey online, and we'll give you an update of that survey. And then, as we'd mentioned at our first meeting, we are going to give you our findings on the airports that you suggested we research, so that we can just take a look at the land uses around them and see what that looks like. Based on all of our findings and all of the work that we've done, we've developed some preliminary land use alternative concepts. There's basically two main concepts with some variations, and we want to be able to share those with you. Then we'll let you know what our next steps are in our future public meeting, and we'll adjourn. So first, we're just going to go hit the area assessments. And Rick, I saw you come online. You're here?
I'm here.
Okay, great. So Rick is going to, Rick Merritt from Elliott D. Pollock and Company, he's our economics consultant, is going to start the area assessments. So economic analysis, here we go. Rick?
Well, we just wanted to lay a foundation for what probably will occur in the Prescott area over the next 15 to 25 years, something like that. So we looked at the MPO population forecast. We looked at several forecasts, but we think the best one that's out there is the MPO forecast, since it took into account a lot of development activity that is pretty new and wasn't accounted for in, say, the forecasts that were put out by the state. So Prescott is expected to grow fairly significantly, but as you're probably aware, Prescott Valley has grown a little more rapidly over the past couple of decades or so, and they're projected to continue to show a little bit more population growth than Prescott itself. Next, please. In terms of jobs, Prescott is expected to have pretty flat growth in jobs, just some 1,500 jobs, something like that. Whereas Prescott Valley is expected to have close to 5,000 more jobs over the next 25 years or so. We think that that's probably a little bit inaccurate, because we think, and we'll get into this more as we continue on, but we think that Prescott will do better than this, particularly with the assets of the airport being there. Next, please. If you look at the current distribution of jobs throughout the county, Prescott, 40% of all employment in the county, Prescott Valley about 20%. But if you look at the population, Prescott has less than 20% of the population. So you are a big employment base. You're really the economic heart of Yavapai County, and there's no reason that shouldn't continue into the future. Next, please. We also look at jobs to population ratio. The typical ratio we find is about 0.5 jobs for every person across the state and in the greater Phoenix area. And you can see that, well, in the state, it's actually less than 0.4. And you can see where Prescott stands here. So once again, you have a lot of jobs relative to your population. Prescott has a much lower job level. Yavapai County overall is 0.28, so below the statewide average. So once again, Prescott is a very important part of the Yavapai County economy and actually an important part of the Arizona economy. Next, please. We looked at different types of retail sales, and once again, Prescott has a significant amount of, on a per capita basis, retail sales, about 25,000, almost 26,000 per person. Prescott Valley, less than half that, and Yavapai County, you can see overall the average is way down there once again. In terms of restaurant and bar sales, they're quite a bit lower, but once again, Prescott is leading the county in restaurant and bar sales. So not only do you have a big employment base, but you also are the retail sales part of Yavapai County. You have car dealers, you have Costco, which is really one of the big retailers in the country in terms of dollars per square foot that they bring in. It's a destination. You have a lot of big box retailers. So once again, from an economic standpoint, for employment, for retail development, you're once again right there at the top of the list for the county. And in terms of the percentage of restaurant or retail and restaurant sales, you have 52% of all the retail sales that are occurring in the county, about 25% of the restaurant and bar sales. So once again, keep in mind, you only have 18% of the population of the county, but you have well beyond that in terms of retail and restaurant bar sales. And once again, it comes back to the mix of retail activity that you have with the big box retailers, activity in the downtown area. You are a destination for a lot of that type of activity. Next, please. We looked at unemployment, and through January of this year, you were below the unemployment rate for the state. Next one, please. And here's what happened over the past year or so, and you can see the big bumps that we had in April, and then some additional growth in unemployment through the summer, but gradually it's come down, and once again, you're doing a little bit better than the state. There's no reason that won't continue into the future as the economy continues to recover. This is the location quotient for Prescott, and what that does is just compare the percentage of jobs in the city, and that's compared to the percentage of jobs in the state. So if you have a location quotient above 1, that means you have a greater part of your employment base relative to the state. So you can see where you really stand out here is consumer goods manufacturing, healthcare, government, telecommunications, media, publishing, entertainment, retail, things of that nature. So it shows you what your strengths are, the types of industry clusters that you'd be focusing on, building upon your strengths. The consumer goods manufacturing is really driven a lot by Sturm Ruger. But education is strong, obviously, Prescott College, Embry-Riddle, Yavapai Community College, things of that. So these are strengths that you want to build upon. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in, I think, the next slide as well. If you go on to that, please. So we looked at the largest employers. Once again, you lead with a lot of manufacturing, healthcare. You have a big hospital here, Embry-Riddle, the community colleges, government is a fairly significant employer. So those are all important types of employers you want to have in your community. They bring above average wages to the community. that means there's more spending, disposable income in the community, and brings a better wealth to the community. You can see the difference in Prescott Valley. They have a different set of types of employers that are much different, really, than what you find in Prescott. Next, please. And if you look at the percentage of county employment by these different industry clusters, high-tech manufacturing and development, you have almost 64% of all the high-tech manufacturing in the county. Consumer goods manufacturing, once again, that is driven by Sturm Ruger, telecommunications. And once again, just keep this all in mind as we go through this. Once again, your population is less than 20% of the county, but you, in many of these categories, are well above that. So high-tech manufacturing is very important. We did some interviews with a gentleman, Leland Hilburn from Aviation, and he gave us some insight into what is going on in the employment market in the Prescott area. And he did indicate that there are some struggles with labor. It's not readily available. And he said that manufacturing expertise is not particularly deep. There are some supply chain issues, which are really, occurring across the country right now. But it's difficult, he said, to get distribution from Phoenix. You're not a first-class location for distribution of goods. So that seems to hold up some of the supply chain issues. But so some of the things you may want to concentrate on in the future is more vocational programs, developing a manufacturing expertise, things of that nature that will help you to continue to build on your strengths in some of these areas of manufacturing, high tech, things of that nature. And just to give you some idea of commuting patterns, about twice as many people commute into Prescott to work each day as leave the city to work. If you look at Prescott Valley, it's just the opposite. Almost twice as many people leave Prescott Valley to work as come into the city to work. So once again, just demonstrating that Prescott is the employment base of the area and of Maricopa or Yavapai County. So once again, you want to maintain that base. You want to keep growing it. Certainly, we think this north area around the airport is the key asset. If you look at any metropolitan area, assets such as airports are the really key towards growth. And that's what you want to protect, and that's where you want the growth to go and to maintain that growth around the airport. Next, please.
That's it.
That's
it.
I'm
sorry. It's not.
This is just a quick summary of that prior table that shows where people, how people are commuting around the valley, the inflow and outflow patterns. Once again, I think it's important. You want to protect that airport. You want to make sure that you have adequate land for growth. You want to build upon the strengths that you have. The high-tech industries are starting to come, and you need to keep bringing them here. And that means you need to have a better labor base and expand your high technology base of employees. With that, that's about it.
Are there any just quick from the steering committee comments or questions for Rick, or any comments from the non-steering committee members? You can just type into chat. Okay, so we're now going to move on to our next thing, which is current and planned land use. And this really is not the land use plan, but the plans that are in place now. So I want to be really clear about that. So we just wanted to share with you that there is a general plan for this area. It's old and the city will be updating it. It largely reflects the airport specific area plan. But the other thing we just wanted to let you know is there's this blue line that goes around the outside, and that's the flight pattern zone. This airport accommodates a lot of training flights from Embry-Riddle, and that blue area is the flight pattern zone. The black line that you see in it that sort of looks like a Celtic cross almost that's standing upside down are what's called the airport impact areas or the airport safety zones. And then the smaller blue line you'll see here is actually the 65 to 69 level of decibel noise zone. So this is typically the high noise area. These are areas that are really considered for safety. And this is an area where you'll see a lot of flight patterns from the training flights, not flights that are landing and taking off. The land uses in the general plan are listed on the side here, but you can see at this point the plan envisioned some low density residential open space and a lot of commercial areas around the airport. This is what we're calling our current land use map or our current planned land use map. And again, you'll see the same airport zones reflected on the map. But in addition to that, there are several plans that have been approved and are either under construction or approved. One thing I wanted to let you know is we were not able to get the GIS files, the data files for the Granite Dells Estates. And that sits generally in this area here, but that is a development that's also been approved and some of you may live in it. It's already under construction. This area here, this kind of yellow area in here is part of Deepwell Ranch. It's more or less at the edge of the city boundaries as well. And you can see the land uses for Deepwell Ranch are mostly residential, this light yellow here, some commercial at the intersection of 89 and 89A, residential kind of up against the airport safety zone on the northern and eastern side of 89A as well, and some residential that falls within that airport safety zone. Deepwell also has commercial and open space uses falling within that airport safety zone. AED or Arizona Eco Development North, you can see has some multifamily housing planned north of 89A, as well as some industrial type uses and open space uses. And then in the south areas, some multifamily within that airport overflight zone, single family residential, and then open space. The other areas are the airport area specific plan, and those land uses are listed up here. You can see some mostly residential type uses with higher density land uses as well, and some mixed use areas, which I think were aligned at one time with some planned roadways and some of that shift. But you can see this one along 89A, and this was going to be, I think it's called Park. There's a parkway here that would have come off from Granite Dells. The last thing we just wanted to point out is that a lot of the area is state land. And so all of the red parcels here are state land. The gray are privately owned. You'll see a lot of municipal parcels, mostly the airport, clearly, that are reflected in green. So that's our state land map, and state land was one of our focus group members and is also an important decider, or not decider, but important voice in this planning process. So now we're going to talk a little bit about transportation. Dean, are you online and able to do that? I think I saw you come in.
Yeah. Yes, I'm here.
Thanks, Dean.
All right. So working through the SIMPO plan and looking at the priorities, and these are from high, medium to low. We realized that the land uses are based off the existing land, the planned land uses at the time, and these may need to adjust or will adjust as we move forward through the planning process and working with SIMPO and the city. But quite a bit of focus on the higher priorities, Willow Creek Road and 89. are the high and medium, and then as we move on to the east of the airport, those are in the lower priorities, and all of these are in their ranking order. You know, quite a bit of scoring that goes into the back end of all of this. Is there? There we go. And the traffic volumes again reflect the planning at the time it was done, that snapshot. And if you look at the 35 along 89 is quite a large increase in volume, and that's why it's such a high priority. And then down on 89A, upwards of 65,000 vehicles per day through that corridor. And just as a rule of thumb, if you think of a roadway, about 10,000, 8 to 10,000.
I think, Dean, you might have frozen. Does anyone else have that problem?
I can't hear him either, Leslie.
Thanks, Tyler. Let's give him a second to come back.
Yeah, Leslie, this is Councilman Phil Good. I'm listening by audio, and I also lost the audio feed.
All right, I'm going to just text him. I'm just going to give him a quick text. Dean, you froze a little bit, so you'll probably need to go back through your traffic conversation real quick.
Okay, can you?
We can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Okay. And where did I freeze up at?
You were right at the point where you were going to say how many vehicles could be handled. You started to say 8 to 10,000.
All right. So a good rule of thumb, just as a point, is that 8 to 10,000 vehicles per day per travel lane is a rule of thumb. So if you look at 89 at 35,000 vehicles per day, that's going to be a 4-lane road, and then over on 89A, pushing 65, it's going to be up to a 6-lane plus roadway, and that's reflected in those priorities that SIMPO has. What there is the network as the land develops around the airport within our planning area, and whatever happens over in the Deepwell Ranch area. So again, you know, these were based on that snapshot in time of the previous land use effort. And last, couple of things, you know, we want to build upon the planning efforts to date, and recommend, are there different priorities than there are existing in the current planning efforts. We'll be recommending secondary and tertiary road networks, and then are there standards for roads and right-of-ways beyond current City of Prescott's and county standards that we need to look at that are inclusive to what the roadways of the future need to be. Next is, I think, active next recreation, and we want to define the active network, you know, define the sidewalks, paths, and trails, recommending those on both sides of collector arterials and highways along all of the linear type features such as drainage, power, gas, canals, and there is a canal right away out there, and abandoned railroads. And building on that to create that other active network. And then reviewing, again, the existing standards and recommending updates. And then this is the perfect time to be recommending the grade separated crossings at highways, drainage ways, and busy streets for the active network to really work well in the future, that we get those grade separated instead of at grade. if at all possible. And then last is the priorities. The snapshot of the priorities. And if we look at the green, those are the current high priorities down on 89 going into the city of widening, and then some signal work on Willow Creek. Then the blue or the medium, so the interchange at 89, 89A, and 89 heading north into Chino Valley. And then the rest of the network is shown is currently in low priority. I might point out that we're hearing quite a bit of feedback on the airport area, the loop road, and does that move up in the priority? Does Great Western Parkway move up, or some connection there on the east side move up in priorities? And I think that was everything.
Dean, we just have a quick question. Could you just
Sure.
quickly respond to a question about where public transit fits into the transportation plan?
And we haven't drilled down on transit yet. We will as we get a more defined land use plan.
Right, but I think at this point, what Dean's reporting on, just for those that are curious, is the existing in-place plans. And at this point, public transit in the north planning area is not planned. So, you know, moving from where we are today, it is not planned. The next, any other questions for Dean before we move on? Okay, thanks. So the next topic is the focus group summaries. And as we mentioned, we had a bunch of focus groups. We held them in April. We did our best to accommodate folks that couldn't make the initial meeting. So we had them on a variety of days at a variety of times. And we met with landowners and developers. We met with the airport and the FAA. We met with some businesses in the area. Some of them even invited us up to see their operations. It was really interesting. We met with adjacent jurisdictions, and we also met with regional and planning entities, in other words, CYMPO. And I think Vinny's on the call as well. And what a focus group is a non-attributed conversation about the planning area. And so what people really do is, you know, we ask them a series of questions to help us plan and understand what's important, and then they tell us what they think. So what I just wanted to do was quickly summarize what we heard. These are really what I would call the top line comments from our focus groups. You know, the businesses were very interested in protecting the long-term viability of the airport. They all felt that ERAU was a huge help in varying degrees. Rick mentioned that a little. Some of the startups, for example, aren't able to offer salaries that are competitive enough for ERAU graduates. Some of them are just a little overeducated for the type of manufacturing they might want, but ERAU is really important in terms of the airport. There was some discussion about supply chain and making sure that these businesses can get their goods to them. Some businesses felt it was a problem. Some businesses felt it wasn't. One of the businesses that we spoke with said that they're actually developing local supply chain vendors. Again, that kind of talks a little bit to the benefits of having some of these manufacturing businesses around. I think what we heard uniformly from all of the businesses is that they need commerce services, that it takes them a day to meet someone for lunch. So if they want to have a business meeting, they have to drive all the way into Prescott. And they said, you know, that's a problem if we need copier toner, if we need to pick up more paper. So there's real interest in having some of those more local business supply services around was important. We spoke also with some landowners and developers. Some of them felt that the roadway standard should be updated to allow for more pedestrian and bicycle use and more green streets. I will say it was an interesting comment because one of the things that we did hear from businesses, and you'll see in the airport comments, is that streets around the airport need to be designed for big trucks and big businesses. And one business explained to us some of the problems with literally there is not enough loading docks at the airport, moving stuff from the airport or getting a truck into his particular establishment. It just doesn't work, and they have to park the truck and ferry some of the equipment in. There were some comments that deep well should not be changed. It's zoned, and that's the way it should be. And that the land north of it that's outside of the planning area will be preserved for ranch land in the foreseeable future. Also, some of the landowners felt that the existing plans protect the airport just fine. And if there's additional land that's needed, the city should just go buy it. But they feel the land around the airport is protected with existing zoning and existing plan development. Adjacent jurisdictions were very emphatic about the value of the Prescott Regional Airport to them. So even though the airport is not within their boundaries, they recognize the airport as a regional employer. The county was especially vocal about talking about the importance of that airport to the county and the region. That there are some opportunities to re-examine some roadway alignment priorities. I keep on wanting to say it's Whispering Springs Parkway, and Dean, you can correct me with the name. But there's a parkway to the east that comes around and connects up to 89 north, quite a bit north of the airport. There's some opportunities maybe to adjust that given new development, given the demands of manufacturing located near the airport. Everyone agreed that it's important to have some multifamily housing in that area, but it's very hard to build it. There's just not the incentive for it. They all agreed that open space and trail connections were important, and that retail development was important to them within their boundaries, but also to the area in general. We also talked with the airport and the FAA, and I just, they prepared a lot of stuff for us. They were very emphatic about protecting the airport and very emphatic about the zones that are around the airport that protect them. They are planning on, I think, extending a runway, so some of these zones may need to be adjusted. But what they want to make sure is that the long-term use of the airport is protected, that the ends of the runways and the cross runway are protected. They're high noise and high activity. We also heard this from the FAA. There was a concern expressed that zoning, the city zoning is cumulative. And so cumulative zoning allows a less intense use to be built. So if you met the standards for zoning, industrial areas, you could theoretically build a subdivision up to industrial standards and a cumulative code. And they felt that roadways need to be designed to serve commercial traffic. It's important that they work for commercial traffic, and that is an important topic to them. And again, we heard that with the businesses as well. In addition to, I guess I can stop here and ask if there are any questions about what we heard from the focus groups. Okay, we also put a survey online as part of the website, and that survey got blasted. So I just wanted to show you, we did have 784 responses to the survey. If someone is concerned they didn't get to put their voice in, and yeah, Henry, yes, the answer to that would be yes. If someone didn't get an opportunity to answer the survey, they're more than welcome to do so. It's still up on the website. We got 784 responses. We had someone blast it just this past weekend, and you can see we got almost 600 submittals over the weekend. Up until then, we had about 80, and we're coming in at about 3 a day or 4 a day after that. This shows where people who responded to the survey were located. And this is general locations. I want you to take this with a little grain of salt. We have about 10 surveys that came in from Brazil and places in the middle of the ocean. So this map was more or less generated by IP addresses. But overall, what it does show is that people within the city responded to the survey. And then people around the area also responded to the survey and were interested in what's going on in the north area. This blue line is the north area. So we talked about a bunch of topics in the survey, and what I did was just summarize it. I didn't do a detailed survey summary because we still have surveys coming in. But this is pretty much, again, what I would call our top line results. The topic of traffic was important, and these average numbers that you see here, people were asked to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 how important something was, with 5 being very important, and 1 being not at all important, and 3 being somewhat important. So you could just, for example, just so that you know, average of 4.6 is the average of all of the responses came out to a 4.6 level of importance. 87% said it was important, very important, somewhat important, which would be 2 and 3 was 9%, and not important was 1%. So that's kind of how to read the survey chart. And the higher the number, in a funny way, the more consolidated the response is. So people really felt that the impacts of development on Granite Creek and traffic were very important in the survey area, and that's not a surprise. People know that's an issue. Wildlife movement also kind of working with open space, the same kind of level of response people were very concerned about. But following that was the importance of aviation related industries being a place for innovation, making sure that new development was looking good, I'm guessing, design and appearance of new development. Affordable housing was important. High wage jobs was important, and providing developed parks was important. So this is sort of a summary. And again, if this doesn't equal 100%, the way this is percent of all surveys. Not everyone answered every question on the survey. One of the things we wanted to pull out was the importance of protecting the airport operations. So the average, most people said, were between 4 and 5. Over 70% of the respondents said protecting the airport operations is really important. So we know that the airport is important to the community, and making sure it continues to operate is also important. What's kind of interesting too is what people envision developing in that area. And again, you were allowed to kind of rank your answers. And so people envision either a high-tech center that's focused on the university and on the airport. About 32% of the respondents said from this larger area said that. But I think equally interesting is that a lot of people don't envision any more development in this area as well. So I think that, and it's important to think when they said that, it's about what's in place. They're not, most people don't know exactly what's owned or what's planned. It's sort of what they see now. So most people don't envision more development occurring there, even though it is planned. But a lot of people really want this area to be a high-tech center. When we talked about the kinds of jobs that people envision in the employment area, most people did envision aerospace-related jobs, followed by manufacturing. Smaller percentage saw it as sort of a retail center. And so I think that's just interesting. It's not really a place where people think they're going to go shop. It's a place where people want to go work. And again, this kind of looks at the no more development vision. And this map just shows where the people did not envision more development are. And this one shows where the vision is. So it's kind of the same. It sort of looks the same. When we talk about important planning topics, and again, this goes back to top line results, the survey software that we use just does a word cloud based on mentions. So this is the kind of important planning topics. People talked about water and development. People probably use the word Prescott a lot in there. sentence, but open space was important to people as well. And then you can see all of the kinds of characteristics that people thought about. What we tried to do is kind of narrow that down again. So we asked some very specific topics. And again, you can see the open spaces in the Prescott North area are really important. What development looks like is really important, and protecting the airport is important. So those are really important things to the community, and we just wanted you to know that as we move forward. We've heard that as we went ahead and worked on our plan. So the last thing that I just want to talk about before I get to the land use plan is the comparable airport findings. And I may ask for some support here from the planner that did a lot of this research, Haley. Sorry. At our last meeting, our first meeting, we agreed on 5 different airports to look at that were generally felt to be comparable to the kind of airport that people envisioned the Prescott Airport being. So we have the Colorado Springs Airport, Glacier, Scottsdale, Ontario, and Redmond. I will say that the airport staff feels that there are some other airports that should be examined. And those suggestions came in a little bit late. But these are the ones that we looked at based on what the steering committee asked for. So when you just look, and again, we're not looking to just be, excuse me, really clear. We're not looking at the airport itself. What we're trying to look at is the land uses around the airport. How is land use managed around these airports? So in Colorado Springs, what we did is we laid the airport right over the Prescott Municipal Airport. The scale is correct. So you can see if the Colorado Springs Airport was located where the Prescott Municipal Airport is located, its airport is mostly surrounded by commercial uses. There's some open space protecting it even more on the east side. And then these yellow areas are mostly residential. This airport's about 7,200 acres, and it's got about 371 operations a day. That is not as busy as Prescott. They do have an overlay zone that protects their airport, and they talk about those land uses as well. The Ontario Airport, again, you can see the airport where my cursor is just about completely surrounded by industrial. It's a 1,700 acre airport, 275 operations a day on average. It generates about $5.44 billion of value. And on airport activity is 413 million. So it's a pretty powerful little engine. And Ontario has protected it quite aggressively. They have also some zoning that protects the airport specifically. And it's an on-airport zoning district. Excuse me. And you can see the land use plan. You can see the airport located sort of in the middle of the city and the amount of commercial that surrounds it. The Redmond Airport is a little bit funkier, but here's the airport. This area here, there was no mapping for Redmond. That's not the city. But it's a 25 acre airport, about 168 operations, 86 operations a day. And this blue area around the airport and these red areas are mostly commercial and industrial. And then here's the general plan that, again, you can see here's the airport, here's the blue, and then lined by red. So most of these airports are very much protected with a lot of commercial and industrial uses. They also have an airport compatibility zone that's, again, within and immediately surrounding the airport. They also have a runway obstacle-free zone. So at the ends of the runway, those areas are protected as well. And that goes 200 feet from the ends of the runway. We also looked at Scottsdale Airport. This is getting a little bit more like Prescott. They've got 503 operations a day on average. So here's the Scottsdale Airport, and you can see there are some residential uses around it, as well as quite a few commercial uses. They've got the McDowell Mountain Preserve as well. This airport provides about $688 million to the economy. And there is some land use requirements for airports. I think what's most interesting about Scottsdale is there's no residential within the 55 LDN, the decibel noise level flight line for the airport. Glacier Park National Airport. The mapping on this was a little rough. You can see there's that little red circle is about where the airport should be. White, as much as we can figure, is no zoning or no land uses. But this is a real important airport with about a $2 billion value and $23,000 job. So it really has a tremendous value to the region, even though the operations are limited. There are tight height limitations around the airport, and we didn't have a good aerial, but what I will tell you is that around the airport, it's very rural in this white area, and there are some just commercial warehousing type pieces and small scale commercial. So that's pretty much the airport study. Are there any questions or comments on that? So overall, what we found is that, yes.
Leslie? Yeah, this is Robin with the airport. I just wanted to mention, so people have a sort of a frame of comparison. The last couple of weeks, we've had a couple days that it was 1,500 operations a day. On average, about 800 to 1,000 operations a day. So just to give, them a frame of reference.
Thanks. And also, as a reminder, not all of these airports are flight training airports. This airport is. A lot of those airports are, a lot of those flights in the Prescott airport stay within that blue line that you saw on the map. Those are training flights. So there is a different kind of an impact. So listening to everyone where we're at, which is sort of the end of the deal, is we kind of set up some land use alternatives. And again, I want to be really clear about this. These are alternatives. We're not recommending one or the other. Our thinking is we just want to share this information with you and find out what you like about each. We'll end up refining, based on your comments today, these alternatives and moving them forward to a public meeting that we're holding in the summer. It'll be an in-person meeting to get additional comment on those alternatives, and then we'll refine that alternative down to a recommended plan. If we get very clear direction from you today, we may just bring forward one option with some variance. So, we're just trying to really reflect what we've heard overall and capture all of those comments in these land use alternatives. So don't pay attention to the numbers. We've kind of shifted around the order based on what we've heard. But I'd call 2A the one that, really reflects what some of the landowners said. And Kurt, do you want to talk about that a little bit? You want me to do it?
Thanks, Leslie. And a few other words before getting the concept. You'll see these things are hand drawn. So, they're not getting it. We're not getting into the details here. We're more just trying to show ideas and concepts here. And as we move along and refine, then we'll get more into more precision here. And then actually, Leslie, could you go to the next one? Yeah, I'd rather start with this one. So Leslie mentioned there's two options with a variant to each option, and just in general, the first option is more reflective of generally what we heard from the landowners and accommodating the land use plans and proposals of what's currently being constructed and has been proposed and approved. And so in this particular concept, you'll see one of what I think is very obvious is a significant portion of the ranch land is preserved. And then to the west and somewhat northwest of the airport, the Deepwell Ranch land, the concept here generally follows the Deepwell Ranch plan, again, and not necessarily because this is hand drawn, it might not exactly reflect it in detail, but the intent was to reflect it at least in concept. And then as you move off to more the east of the airport, you can see kind of this lavender color. We're starting to look at introducing more employment and business type uses, and with the idea of let's protect the airport given the Deep Well Ranch proposal with other lands, let's protect the airport as much as we can through the employment uses. Now, one thing I should point out here, and we'll have to adjust this on future iterations. The airport has pointed out to us we need to accommodate the runway extension. So we're not seeing that here, but in future iterations, we'll have to take a look at that, and that will affect the plan somewhat. For instance, we do show a loop road around the airport here, and the extension of the runway will impact that. But I think that's an idea we still want to show in the future. I think another then key idea to this plan is looking east of the airport and east of the 89 and 89 intersection, creating some sort of more active node, a commercial employment node where we could potentially have some high tech and regional commercial uses, capture some of that tax base and just introduce the commercial employment and tech uses that are that are desired. Let's see here, and then to the east, you can see there's a corridor. Oops, we lost the plan. Leslie?
Did it go away?
Yeah, we lost it from at least I'm not seeing it.
I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there, but
yeah. Okay. Okay.
Do you guys have it back?
Yes, I see it.
I'm sorry.
You can see for Granite Creek, we've showing here a greenbelt corridor, and to the east of that, again, there are some employment uses and non-residential uses reflecting, the flyover zones and so forth. But further east, we start creating a residential neighborhood, introducing some neighborhood commercial and civic and park uses within that residential neighborhood. And even we talked about, well, can we put a little commercial along the boundary line with Prescott Valley? Maybe again, there's ability or capacity to serve their neighborhoods to the east, and frankly, capture some of that again, tax revenue. And then I'll just point out, Leslie, it looks like at least on this option, we didn't get the latest version. There are a couple changes in response to comments from the city. For instance, those kind of greenish aqua, down there, that we've changed that. That's not in line with existing plans and proposals and stuff. And I believe we changed that to residential. So there, couple minor things
that might be a miss on our part, but this should be residential.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's go up to the variant to go back up. And here, the change here is just saying, well, kind of similar to that idea of, capturing tax resident and serving the neighborhoods. What if there is, further out, a little further out in the future, some pressure for development along the boundary there, and maybe we could accommodate there up in the kind of the northwest a little bit of additional development. Obviously that cuts into some of the ranch land, but still maintains the bulk of that northwest area as ranch land, but is showing some development along the border there. So that's the summary of the
Yeah, and I'm just going to kick in a little bit on
yeah,
the
please,
circulation.
Leslie.
Um, I think this is, I'm sorry, this is an age problem, but I believe this is a reiteration of Whispering Springs Parkway. I think that's the name. But one of the things we want to point out is we want to make sure our roadway network really looks at, this would be the Granite Dells, I think, interchange. We want to take advantage of this to provide access to the commercial areas to the greatest extent possible. So maybe one of the discussions we had would be, instead of just focusing on building this long loop and connecting it down, the initial plan was to bring it across the wash and connect it to 89A. Maybe the way we do it is we kind of connect it to an airport road, and again, focusing on this loop road around the airport, which would support business and business development. And you'll see that kind of concept echoing in some of the other plans as well. Another thing is just the idea of connecting Viewpoint Drive into this area to allow it to maybe use some of the municipal center uses, take advantage of some commercial uses, and also letting them take advantage of the wash, which is an important feature within the area that everybody was concerned about. Anything else you want to add to that, Dean? Kurt?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
No, you said it, Leslie.
Okay, thanks, guys. Here's option 2.
Okay, so option 2 is taking I would say a much longer term view. So it's being more aggressive from a couple standpoints. One, envisioning development on most of what we were previously showing as the ranch land, and being more aggressive about protecting the airport in this, and you'll see, frankly, and there is it does have some revisioning beyond the ranch land, but the other areas of the Deep Well Ranch plan, just some potential suggested or potential adjustments. So you can see then, and again, this is an instant, or well, same as the last plan. We'll need to look at revising this to show the runway extended, but you can see again we have the route, or the route around the airport. And you can see much of that then is the purple, which we're calling employment uses. So you can see much more of that particularly to the northwest of the airport. And then beyond that, ideas this is kind of built in around the idea, this option of 3 nodes. So we have one node at 89A intersection, which would be much more, I guess, commercially oriented, and can we start to even accommodate some mixed use or more active lifestyle pedestrian use, pedestrian commercial in there, not at all 3 of those corners, but within that area. We understand there's some challenges with visibility as well, but I think the idea is that intersection would be a more active commercial node. Whereas if you move up 89 and you get a little north of the airport, kind of to the northwest, envisioning that is a high-tech node that would then also link into the employment uses surrounding the airport. And then the third node, similar to what we had shown on the prior option, a node there, but more focused on regional commercial uses that take advantage of 89A and the link to Prescott Valley. So that was a big part of idea driving this plan. And then you can see again, we have for Granite Creek, we have open space corridor, and then based around those three nodes and the corridor, then we start to set up, a few neighborhoods. So to the northwest of the airport and kind of north of that high tech zone, we have a residential neighborhood with some commercial uses, again, similar to what we had shown in the prior option. And then north of 89A and east of the corridor, again, another residential neighborhood. And you'll see this differs a little from the other. We'll show you a variation here. We have kind of these two little commercial civic nodes, one east of the purple employment area, and that's kind of an area where the employment could link into those commercial uses for services and such. And then there's one up further in the northeast to serve the neighborhood, and also Prescott Valley. And again, apologies to the city that we did make. There are a few land use color changes that the latest iteration unfortunately didn't get dropped in, but just a few minor things, like we had mentioned that commercial recreation that's been taken out, or that along the northwest, the blue, that civic use, that's been removed. But generally, this just a couple minor things, land use changes that we missed showing here. And if you could go down to the next.
I just want to
option.
jump in for a second here.
Oh, yeah.
So just the thinking behind the second node on 89 is we've already got commercial and kind of high-tech employment starting here. So this takes advantage of that, as well as takes advantage of a parcel, and all of these plans do that. A parcel that was dedicated or sold to, I think it was Yavapai County, but some health group for either a hospital or health-related, health type of development. So it was really building off what's going to be there, just to make sure that that kind of combined with some of these more commercial and high-tech uses could exist. One of the things, again, Kurt talked about is, we heard a lot about not having to drive into town for lunch. So the thought would be, you could even walk theoretically. It'd be a beautiful walk if there could be some kind of accommodation across the wash for some of the commercial uses to take advantage of a small service center that could support them on the other side of the wash to the east. And then again, that would be supported by additional housing and single family development, also kind of buffering what we're seeing coming in from the east as well. Taking advantage of these key interchanges for commercial and employment types of development as well, not letting that opportunity go to waste. And again, creating these interim connections, or not interim, but connections in the short term that could serve commercial development and promote that types of development around the air park.
Yeah,
Okay,
the other thing about this, Leslie, is it more or less incorporates the Great Western Parkway alignment.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's,
which, as you can see, comes up
key
around here.
Yeah, and I know Dean, and I don't know if he wants to talk about. He had made a suggestion, which we didn't draw in yet, but might be worth explaining. Is he suggested modifying the alignment of that a little bit, so where it hits 89 is actually a little further south, so that this the city would control all four corners of Great Western Parkway and in 89, whereas right now it doesn't. You can see there's kind of that gateway there. So that's an interesting idea that I think is potentially worth exploring on future iterations.
And just one other thing I want to add, for those of you that may not know this area that well, this gray area here that you'll see in all of the plans is an existing solar field. So this is an in-place industrial development that exists. It's next to Granite Creek, and so we are reflecting that in all the plans. It's sort of part of the what would be in the airport takeoff area as well. So we just wanted folks to know. Someone also brought up about the idea of performing arts. We're not at that level yet. I'll be very blunt. Right now, what we're just trying to do is kind of figure out the general program for uses, making sure that we kind of accommodate all of the larger concerns. All of our thoughts do have kinds of these nodes that could accommodate that type of a use, but I think especially for the performing arts, we'd want to make sure something for that use was located outside of the airport flight zones, flight circle, because that would certainly don't want to go listen to symphony or ballet with planes roaring overhead. So even though, I'm sure symphonies more or less operate at night, so does the airport. The airport mentioned us, there's a lot of lights that we need to think about as well. So, thinking about how that might impact development towards the northeast is something else we need to kind of move forward with. And begin to work.
Especially as we work in the extended runway, so
Right.
that could modify some of the land uses more to the north, kind of the northeast. We might have to push some of that residential back a little bit and such. And then the only difference between this is the iteration on that last option. The only difference is if in kind of that northeast neighborhood, there's one more centralized kind of commercial civic unit to serve the neighborhood. Whereas if you recall the prior one, we had two separate ones. So there isn't that immediate connection or that more direct connection to the employment. So so that summarizes that's the presentation of the land use alternative concepts.
So what I want to do now is we have a piece of software, I can just get to it, that allows us to record your comments. I'm just going to pull that up and put it on the screen now. There you go. So you guys should see the 4 land use alternatives that we just talked about here on the screen, and we're able to just kind of drag and drop your comments, record them, and drag and drop your comments onto these maps. So I think where we're at now is we just like to hear from you and hear what you're thinking. And here are the 4 concepts. You can, whichever one you want to comment on, or able to, drop sticky notes on it, and you could tell us what you're thinking. I'm going to also place in the chat a share link that you can actually get onto this software if you just wanted to put your own comments on without speaking to us. And so you can sign into that. We call it a mural. You can sign into the mural, and you'll see a little symbol come up here that's going to be your avatar. And the way to work this is if you want to drop a sticky note, you click on the sticky note. If you want to draw a shape, you can draw a shape or a symbol. And if you want to draw a line, you can draw a line. So somebody's got a couple folks already busy trying to get online. That's great. So does anybody have any comments?
Leslie, this is Councilman Philgood. So I
Yes,
would like
hi,
to make some
Councilman.
general comments since I'm not being able to watch the presentation. I've only been able to listen to it. So clearly the focus groups, I think if you look even at the business community, our surrounding municipalities, the county, it's pretty clear that one of the probably the highest priorities is protecting the perimeter of the airport, particularly the north section, where there's a possibility for expanding high-tech, whether it's distribution, industrial, or high-tech related businesses, whether they're avionics or aviation or cyber connected, whatever. Those are, I think there's a consensus that those are economic drivers for not only Prescott, but all of our surrounding areas. So the necessity for really doing a legitimate buffer zone of protection to make sure that when they do locate here, they're not going to be dealing with residential neighbors that are objecting to big commercial traffic on Ruger Road or whatever. That has to be almost set in stone now so that as development happens, we can protect those areas and make sure that as those commercial developments come in, they know that they're going to be able to make those capital investments to assure their business viability. So you've got, and I know there's been several references to the Great Western Parkway, and as being a member of the executive board of SIMPO, it's pretty clear that there's not a real legitimate expectation that that's going to be built any time in the near future. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to generate that kind of bypass road or arterial, and it's just not in the legitimate cards for ADOT to be able to be funding something like that. So we have to be more focused on 89, 89A, the loop road, and those kinds of practical arterial traffic circulation that needs to be done and it needs to be planned for and set aside now. I even believe that 89, 89A is pretty insufficient to handle the future expansion of airport capacity, operations, and development in general. When we have $6.5 million just to add another on-ramp going eastbound from the underpass, it's pretty clear that at some point that's going to have some real capacity issues, and I think that needs to be planned for more sooner than later. So I think it's pretty clear from everyone's perspective, and I mean Yavapai County, Chino Valley, Prescott Valley, Prescott, that the airport protection is so critical, not only now but in the future, that it really has to be a very high priority.
Thank you, Councilman. And you can't see it, but we wrote that down. It's on the board.
And we have to also consider the fact that Embry-Riddle University and their flight training schools are going to be expanding dramatically. We already know from some of the major air carriers throughout the country that they were pushing a lot of their senior pilots into retirement. And now that they're starting to recover, they're going to need dramatically more pilots. And Embry-Riddle is a big training program for them. So I think you'll see more and more students in those programs, and consequently, you're going to have more and more of that high noise capacity student pilot training. That again is another reason why the residential areas have to be really well informed of where they're buying, what the impact it'll be, and that they're clearly informed and aware of it when they start purchasing their homes.
Okay, we've got a couple of comments. Oh, Jazz is updating the land use maps, so. Thank you, Jazz.
They should be in there now. They just need to be locked.
Are they on top there?
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
placed them on top, so they should be the revised
Well, they
colors.
are locked. I think
Okay,
you-
great.
Christie unlocked.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, Leslie.
Trevor,
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Councilman. Trevor Sandy, you've got your hand raised?
Yes, I'm Sandy Studi, and I am a transit advocate. And whichever options you choose, I strongly advocate for at least reservation of land to be used for transit hub on the east side of this development, and also the inclusion of park and ride capability. When you look at your numbers, that traffic is the third highest issue for your survey recipients, and that 42.3% of all the transport or the jobs or whatever the number was, with people coming into Prescott, it would stand to reason that many of those folks, especially people who would benefit from not having to drive in and out of Prescott during peak commute times, to be served by a park and ride capability. And while this is not a well built out network, there is a bus that comes down 29 up and down 29A and through Deepwell Ranch now, every day. And so the build out on the west side of the road is already beginning, and hopefully there will be opportunity for people to use that for commuter service, schools, serving Embry-Riddle in the future. Just wanted to get that on the discussion.
Thanks, Sandy, we got it. Are there any other comments?
Yes, if I may, this is Annette Carlson. I'm the Chancellor for Embry-Riddle. I strongly agree with both of the previous speakers, so maybe not so much to add, but it is true we are expanding our operations, and we're keeping the airport very busy. I don't see that going down over the next decade or so, and then might continue to increase. We are also concerned with the fact that we have more or less like two campuses. We have the main campus that is on Willow Creek Road, and then our, sometimes we call it the North Campus, which is basically the flight line by the airport. So students need to go between the main campus, where they have most of the classes, and most of the professors have their offices there. Driving up Willow Creek to the airport, it's not a long drive, but it does generate traffic. And I've only been here 2 years, but it seems to me that the traffic on Willow Creek has already increased. So having public transportation available would help our students and faculty, but it also needs to be kept in mind that we will probably increase our contribution to traffic. I don't want to use the word significantly, but could be noticeable over the next few years as we expand. We depending on a lot of different parameters, we might not quite double our number of students in flight, but at least increasing them 50%. So we are growing. To us, it's very important to protect the airport. I agree with everybody who said protect the airport and have the focus on having job opportunities there, rather than focus on a lot of housing. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I grabbed that, and I've got that on the board as well. Any other comments? I've got a comment from Henry Fleury. One obstacle to software-based high tech in this area is Prescott's relatively slow internet speed. Does anybody want to add another comment? Trevor's got a comment. He's asking if we add more jobs, isn't that going to increase commuter traffic around the airport? And then another comment from Trevor asking if we're suggesting shifting the commercial land uses at 89A north around the tech center. And I don't think that that's the intent. I think it's more to create more of a mixed use tech center north on 89A.
Yeah, you're correct, Leslie.
Any other comments?
Hi, Leslie. This is Bill Finelli.
Hi, Bill.
Wanted to mention that, and you kind of mentioned it as far as the way that the road standards exist related to bikes right now, but certainly this is an area where you could alleviate some of the traffic and improve the quality of life with really focusing in on the right kind of bike facilities. As an example, the new section of Willow Creek Road heading into that roundabout now, while it has a multi-use path on the west side of the road, which is great for local traffic, someone going through there to get to the airport or to get out to Chino Valley, there's no bike lanes there and on a 4-lane road. So as that gets busier, that'll be trickier for bikes. So keeping an eye on what the standards are, maybe changing them going forward on some of these arterial roads could be very helpful for biking.
Okay. I'll add that in there. And another comment from Trevor that says it's hard for Embry-Riddle students to find housing and they have to commute. Does anybody want to comment on that, or forgot someone else is getting this comments out? Okay.
So with the
Anybody
students,
else?
so
Yeah.
with the students, I'm sorry. So with the students at Embry-Riddle, a lot of half of our students live on campus and half live out in the community. I do think a lot of them rent houses in Prescott Valley right now. It's a challenge for them to find affordable housing.
Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments they want to add to this? Anybody have any feelings about which one they prefer? Does anyone have any comments about any fatal flaws they see in any of them? Because if we don't, oh, someone's got their hand raised. Robin. Hey, Robin. Sorry about that. Don't forget to take yourself off mute.
Thank you. So I'm kind of thinking it may be a blend of the concepts. When we look at what you show as 1B and 1A down below, the airport is very supportive of the buffer that appears to have been added in those concepts. And so it's very much appreciative of that. Perhaps, though, it goes into quite a bit of residential immediately north of the North Airport buffer area. And truly, if the economic engine that the airport has the potential to be is successful, as we hope it is, we may even want a little additional area above there. Now, I noticed the concept listed as 2B and 2A on the screen have quite a bit of ranch land or agriculture. And so the question is, do we commit to residential, this early on, or allow this area to flourish and see if additional industrial commercial development would be beneficial just a little further north of the North Industrial Belt? So where you go down to the multifamily housing, down below a little bit, down below. Over here toward the northwest side of the airport. Thank you. Yeah, a little bit further. You're almost there. Now
Yeah,
pull it
there
down.
we go. I think
Down
Leslie.
below. Down below. Down below, right there.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah.
The second thing is you're right. Once the runway extends using this same concept, it'll take it all the way to where you show the green area, the open space on the northeast end. And so it will literally, with the approach lighting system, touch the wash.
Mhm.
So on that same diagram, you would lose all of that proposed industrial because it's going to be the runway extension.
Yeah, so it makes sense to make up for that loss
On
to
the other
north,
side of the
potentially to
wash.
the north. Yeah.
Yes,
or to
exactly.
The
So
other side, yeah.
So you're proposing residential above that, and we're saying no, continue your industrial or protection buffer, if you will, up there.
Mhm.
Almost commensurately at the opposite end of that same runway, you show some good, the red bottom left of the airport. And just to the left of that and up, where the red is, that's where your departure path for the 80% of the traffic on that runway goes, is down and to the left. So if you go up to where the red is at the end of the runway, your cursor's not moving, so. Did we freeze?
I think we may have frozen.
Yeah,
Okay.
it looks like that's the cursor's frozen.
So we would suggest just a little bit more departure protection. This is where the U.S. Forest Service takes off fully loaded with fuel and extinguishing agent and stays very low to the ground over that departure zone down and to the left off of the runway that goes map southwest. Otherwise, we do see a bit of promise in these diagrams.
Folks, did I lose everybody? Can you guys hear me now?
Can hear you. We lost the
I'm going to try and get it
plans.
right back on here
Yeah.
for a sec.
Okay.
Sorry. Let's see. You guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Are we there?
Yeah, we're there.
I'm sorry, everyone. Okay, Robin, I am really sorry.
No, that's fine. We were talking about the approach paths to the ends of the major commercial service runways. Yeah, there and at the other end, and we just need to take a look at that before this closes out and make sure that those approach paths are protected. Because the commercial service operator not only has height obstruction, general issues, but also specific to the aircraft's one engine departure procedures that must be protected. And we are envisioning the expansion on the north side of the airport. You had put it as commercial and jobs. We'd like to clarify that's not going to be a flexible zoning situation. Would it be? We really are hopeful that the way it appears is that if it's commercial or industrial, it stays commercial, industrial, and doesn't have the ability to be taken back down to residential.
Just add that in. And I just want to add that George indicated earlier in the chat that you can't build housing in industrial zones, but you could theoretically, there are other zones that are not housing that you could build it in, but we'll make it. Okay. Thanks, Robin. Anybody else have comments? Okay, well, I'm not seeing any, hearing any other comments, so we'll post these comments on the website. We'll provide folks a link to this mural as well so people can use it. I think it's pretty intuitive. You've seen how we use it. It's pretty easy. You can just use these bars here to get to these sticky notes or these arrows, and you can have a field day with it. We'll also post the presentation online so folks can see that when they're having trouble going to sleep. And we'll go forward from there. I just wanted to bring up a couple of more things before we end. One is to thank all of you for your patience. We know it was just a total information dump. To let you know that we are planning a community meeting to get input on this plan. And that meeting is planned for July 14th. We haven't really set a time for that. It will be posted on the website. Hopefully at that meeting, we'll probably have a fairly similar presentation, maybe a little shorter, but our goal will be to get folks to provide us with input on those airport plans, and we may revise them slightly, these options slightly, based on the comments we got from you today. We have in our schedule fairly regular meetings. I'm thinking that we'll probably have one meeting prior to the community meeting just to let you see the revisions minor that we do to the plan, or if working with the city, they want to, and if frankly, comments that we hear on the website really direct us to one alternative, we may, just refine it down to one and present that. But we'll present all of that information to you at your next meeting, which will likely be in June. We've been more or less meeting the third or the fourth. It was the third Thursday. I guess there are council meetings then. So we could try to meet on June 30th. But we'll confirm that, when I know the city schedule prior to that. Are there any other comments for the good of the order? I'm seeing some great comments now coming in through the chat. So hold on a minute. Let me see what we've got coming up here. One is, will there be a jobs and absorption analysis? No, I'm sorry, we're not scoped for that, Trevor. But it's a great question. And we've got your correction, Robin, on the sticky note. But I think that, clearly Rick's economic analysis demonstrates that Prescott is a regional hub. It's a regional hub for high tech. The airport is vital to the future of that area. I think that's kind of unanimous from everyone we've heard. They've certainly got the resources in terms of education and other industries to begin to build their supply chain. We heard there may be an Amazon fulfillment center getting located up in Prescott Valley. So we're anticipating that this region will only grow and only get stronger. So again, we thank you very much for your time. And again, all this will get posted online, and feel free to provide us with what your comments are. Any other questions? Any other comments?
Thanks, Leslie. Great work.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks.